I want to talk about Star Wars Outlaws. I was going to call it Jedi Outlaws. That's not what it is called. It's so
They
hot
were,
in here, man. I feel like I'm going crazy.
From a certain point of view, they were
From
Outlaws.
a certain point of view, they were. They absolutely were. No, the actual game, Star Wars Outlaws, it's coming out August 20th. We got a 10-minute gameplay reveal via IGN first last week. I had seen a little bit of this when we were talking about it earlier in the week, but now I've done the full 10 minutes, which shows off one mission where you have to acquire a Sarlacc tooth in order to get a turret installed on your ship. And there's kind of a lot to talk about because I'm a little mixed on it. There seems to be a lot of good elements and a lot of bad elements, and I really don't know how the full package is going to end up. I know you are maybe a little bit more down on it, so what came to mind?
I don't know. It's weird. I've been kind of yo-yoing on Star Wars Outlaws. I remember when it was like when it was announced that Ubisoft Massive Entertainment were working on an open world Star Wars game, like literally 3 years ago. I was like, hell yeah, finally, Star Wars games, they're getting made. This is good. It's not just all EA. I think that was one of the first non-EA ones announced, right?
Yeah.
And then I thought the initial reveal trailer of this was really fun. I was like, oh, cool, we're going to get to team up with a BX Commando droid. They're pretty neat. And then everyone was thirsting over the droid, which is always very funny. And we've seen different, bits and bobs of gameplay. I think the overall setting of the game's great, that it's set in between episodes 5 and 6, because I've got complete episode 3 and 4 gap fatigue. There's just too much of it. So that... Specifically, I'm like, that's pretty fun. And I've enjoyed that they've committed to the full scope of making an open world Star Wars game. The idea that, you get to go to multiple different planets, you get to have a, wanted system, you get to play with different criminal factions, you got your own starship that you can engage in space fighter battles with. That's all really fun. But certainly there is a noticeable typical Ubisoft delineation between the stuff we were shown months ago and the stuff that was shown last week, and it is a little bit concerning purely on the polish front. And I know that Josh Brown, we have spoken about on the podcast before how in several open world Ubisoft games you kind of have to work around the jank and make your own fun, which was definitely the case with Ghost Recon Wildlands and was still the case with Ghost Recon Breakpoint. You had to play those games in a certain way so that mechanically they didn't really fall apart. And I'm worried now, looking at the gameplay for Outlaws, where the stealth seemed very suspicious, the combat seemed a little bit unresponsive, and the overall presentation felt a little bit kind of janky. I'm now a little bit concerned that this is going to be another Ubisoft open world game that isn't Assassin's Creed, because I think Assassin's Creed, weirdly, even when it's glitchy, it still plays like it's meant to. I'm just worried that this is going to be another one where you have to keep your perspective fixed to a certain angle so that you don't see all the bits of, twine and wool falling apart at the seams.
I'm so pleased you said that, because you've summed up exactly how I felt about this 10-minute demo, because in certain moments, it looks like it's all coming together. It looks spectacular. It looks like it's got all the details down. I think at a glance, it looks like a fun, high-budget AAA game. But yeah, as it was going on, there were just things here and there that felt like it was fraying at the edges, and little things that might not even mean much in the grand scheme of it all. I thought, for instance, the explosions looked pretty terrible and jarred with how good the lighting and backdrops were. But that's an issue I've had with Ubisoft games for a while, where those finer details just don't seem to be polished all that good, and it can lead to that jank that you mentioned there, and having to kind of find the fun in a big amalgamation of bits and pieces that kind of link but don't quite link. I thought the same with her taking off in the ship towards the end and kind of going into orbit. And I get it, it's hard to render literally going from the environment of a planet into space itself, but all I could see when you were going through the atmosphere was, I'm in a loading screen now that's disguised as a controllable moment, and it's cool. It's a cool trick, but I'm kind of sick of Ubisoft just having cool tricks and gimmicks. I kind of want something a little bit more substantial, and I hope I get it from this, because I do really like the writing. I thought the characterization here was pretty cool. You know, nothing necessarily spectacular, but it was fun enough. The interactions that were on display, and hopefully that is sustained across the board. But yeah, there was just that element of jank that I hoped Ubisoft had gotten away with. You know, comparing this, I think, to the Assassin's Creed Shadows gameplay reveal does it a little bit of a disservice, because I was really impressed by that. I thought that did feel next gen in terms of its finer detailing and its animations in particular, whereas this, it kind of looked like it played like Watch Dogs 2 in a way, a prettier version of Watch Dogs 2, but the shooting, the melee takedowns, even like the driving on the speeder, it looked like an Ubisoft game, and that's for better or worse, I suppose.
That's the other big concern, is that the shooting is very repetitive. I obviously like open world repetitive shooting, part and parcel. We know that Rockstar games have really repetitive third-person shooting, but they compensate for that largely with, you know, satisfying connected feedback and also the detail and the interactability of the overall overworld itself. Whereas with this, I'm looking at it and I'm just like, wow, everything just feels a little unfluid. Everything feels a little bit, you know, move slowly into cover, take a few pot shots, maybe throw a few grenades. It feels, and I hate to use this word because I feel like it's the go-to gut reaction for every kind of, you know, hyperbolized gamer backlash moment. It did feel a little bit last gen. And that in itself is frustrating, because if all this effort has been put into, you know, the actual scope of the game, you know, on a kind of like a horizontal playing field, I'm worried that vertically there's not much depth to where we're going to be going with a lot of it. And again, you know, these are certain things that you can forgive because it's the first open world Star Wars game, which is ridiculous to say. I know Lego Star Wars, the Skywalker Saga was open world as well for some stupid reason. Why? Why? But I hope that it's fun, and I hope that it kind of, again, cuts through that sense of Star Wars fatigue. I think a lot of us will probably be still experiencing. I know that I haven't finished the last 2 episodes of The Acolyte, even though I was enjoying it beforehand, because I just got so exhausted by the discourse of it all. So yeah, I don't know. I'm optimistic-ish. I hope that this is just a bit of an awkward showing, and that there is more to it than that gameplay was able to capture. But again, you know, I feel like good games kind of speak for themselves, and you shouldn't have to play them in a certain way for the light to kind of shine through at times. I don't know.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you know what? I'm going to actually say something that will make me hate myself now, because normally I really resent this argument, but all the way through the demo I was thinking, if this wasn't Star Wars, would I care? And I know that's kind of stupid in a way, because it's Star Wars for a reason. You're interested because of the story, because of the way it's playing with the years of history that you have, and the potential of what you can do in a game version of that franchise. But just in terms of what you were actually doing and that gameplay loop, I thought if this was the next Watch Dogs and you were doing these kinds of missions and this kind of shooting and these kinds of stealth takedowns, what is there that's really jumping out at me? And it does have that lack of fluidity that you said. You know, even watching that moment where you go from pressing X to do the takedown, which, you know, goes into a canned animation, then you go out into cover and you're shooting enemies, and there's just that sort of, that overall lack of fluidity that does, to me, make it feel next gen, and makes it look a little bit sterile, I suppose. I have that issue, I know I've mentioned it before, with a lot of Ubisoft open worlds where I just don't feel like they're reactive enough. I feel like I'm almost playing a character on like a film set. Like, they're just they feel very static. They feel very uninteractive, which kind of sounds stupid for a video game, but it's just they're missing that edge that I think the best open worlds kind of have, or best environments even have. And when I saw this, I kind of, that popped into my mind again. But I don't want to be down on it too much. There is a lot to enjoy. I do hope that they manage to make the blaster you're using with its different modes feel interesting to use and not feel as, in my opinion, as bad as the blasters felt in Star Wars Battlefront 1, which just I did not think were fun to use at all. They're quite maybe a hard weapon to get right, but at least they're giving you different options here. I do think the space combat looks pretty decent, and the ability to customize your ship in that regard, maybe do side missions to get better gear for it, new customizable aspects. That looked neat enough. Like you said, the big worry is that a lot of these individual parts seem pretty good, but are there too many when they should have focused on that sort of level of depth and verticality rather than just maybe going too ambitious with the amount of features they wanted to include. But it's hard to really rag on someone for doing that, because at least it is ambitious. At least they are trying to give you like this huge space opera spectacle. And like you said, for the first proper big open world Star Wars game like this, that is to be commended, and hopefully will in practice across a long period of time actually feel satisfying, rather than just, you know, scrutinizing a chopped up 10-minute mission that we've seen so far.